Say, man, y'all see the video y'all on the screen? Y'all see it was by Comic Books versus the World. Could the Guardians of the Globe have been Omni-Man? Invincible Season 1. I'm curious. That's why I'm here. Let's jump into it right now. I'm not gonna be here too long.
Kill Mini, an action-packed fight made for movie night. Life gets bueno.
Notion has been the centerpiece of my workflow. It's quite literally an extension of my brain. I can take notes.
Let's jump right into it, shall we? Because in my honest opinion, they could not have been Omni-Man at all. At all for real. There's no way in hell they could have. Y'all seen what he did to those soldiers that went into his house and were invincible. I mean, I'm curious. Let's see if they could have beaten him. It's kind of cold.
So yeah, this doesn't really need to be said, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I love the new Amazon Prime show.
I do too. That and The Boys. Those are probably two of the best shows Amazon Prime has to offer. I'm stamping that shit right there.
That's so funny. Last time I heard that, I laughed so hard I fell off my dinosaur.
It's funny, it's got great animation, good acting, and the action in it is about as brutal as you can possibly get in an animated superhero show.
Facts.
Like in the very first episode, we see the superhero Omni-Man facing off with his soon-to-be former friends, the superhero team known as the Justice League. The Guardians of the Globe, before, let's just say, dispatching everybody after a pretty hardcore.
before he wipes them. What the hell?
Scene.
Oh no.
Oh, that's fucked up.
And yeah, they may have all gotten their asses stomped, but looking back at this fight again, I think it's pretty clear that the team actually stood a pretty decent chance of winning this thing before they started to lose some of their key players. Now, I have seen a couple of
Immortal, the fast nigga, and War Woman.
Talking about this idea of whether or not the Guardians could have stayed alive.
But he had to take those niggas out first so they didn't have a chance
to take out Omni-Man, and these videos seem to agree that they would have eventually beaten him, albeit with a good bit of struggling on their part. I disagree. Kind of. Not only do I think the team could have won this fight easily, I also think the Guardians could have even killed Nolan just as easily.
Honestly, because look at him. They was beating this nigga down, though. They was beating this nigga down. I was surprised to see that they was actually holding their own.
Were a bit more prepared and went into this fight with the right mindset. Before I get into how exactly I think the team could have defeated Omni-Man, let's go over just a few of the biggest mistakes they made in the fight we actually got to see. Stuff that I think heavily impacted the fight and shifted things to Nolan's favor. Number 1. Fighting with morals on. During the fight with Omni-Man, it's pretty clear from the start that the team's not super jazzed about
they didn't want to fight him. That was their teammate.
To the point where they even outright confirmed that they've actually been holding back for a majority of the fight.
Someone must be controlling him. He would never do this.
Regardless, it's him or us.
I choose us.
Now, to be fair, I'm not saying I don't understand why they held back at first. It's established early on that Omni-Man's worked with the Guardians and been friends with everybody on the team for years, and for all they knew, he could have been mind-controlled or something, like he wasn't in control of himself. All that together, plus the fact that they're still superheroes. And I get why these guys wouldn't immediately go for a kill shot, even when they had the chance. But you know, at the same time, common sense tells you that if your friend tried to sneak attack one of you with a headshot, or even after he crushed the skull of one of your actual friends with his bare hands, then maybe you should start fighting like your life depends on it. Because it kinda did. So yeah, long story short, the Guardians were fighting like superheroes, like they were dealing with a friend gone rogue, and Omni-Man wasn't. Number 2, nope.
Facts.
Fought with any strategy.
Honestly, I mean, what strategy could you have come up with in that moment? They didn't have a strategist on their team.
Except Omni-Man. During the fight with the Mauler twins earlier in the episode, you get the impression that these guys were a pretty decent team. I mean, they're actually using their powers and abilities together, chaining attacks off of each other to do as much non-lethal damage as possible, while
they was fucking niggas up, though.
Had guys on their toes and saving civilians the entire fight. So wasn't it weird that everybody suddenly seemed like they stopped knowing what they were doing when Omni-Man showed up for this fight? I mean, seriously, the guy's worked with them for years, he's had tons of time to prep for this fight, and he even goes for arguably the biggest threat in the room first. Where's that level of strategy from all
fuck.
veteran heroes?
Nah, that shit was insane because his head would have been gone. I think that's mortal, but his head would have been fucking gone, bro.
Seriously, these guys have a pretty decent variety of powers to work with that they could be using in a whole bunch of interesting ways,
True.
and they don't really
Especially the fast nigga. The fast nigga and the phaser.
thing with them for some reason. Everybody was just lining up to fight Omni-Man one-on-one for the most part, and even the few that did actually have pretty effective strategies, like Darkwing and Red Rush keeping him off balance and playing defense for the rest of the group respectively, inexplicably decided to ditch those plans almost immediately in favor of going hand-to-hand with him instead.
For no reason whatsoever, knowing that these niggas were not capable of going there hand to hand with Omni-Man at all. So, stupid.
What is the point of that? Even if the Guardians somehow weren't aware of the asteroid save he apparently did a while ago,
Should have seen the asteroid I diverted a few years ago, the size of Texas.
you gotta think they'd still be at least somewhat aware of how powerful he is,
Facts.
since they've been doing missions with him for a few years, right? Bottom line, veteran heroes should have been able to think up something better than catch these hands when trying to fight Omni-Man. Number 3, keeping the fight in one spot. I'm not faulting them too much for this one, since everything did kind of happen pretty quickly, but let's be clear, this fight could have played out very differently for the Guardians if they took the time to make a strategic retreat somewhere else. It honestly doesn't really matter where they run off to, just as long as they manage to lead Nolan outside. Not only does this give them some breathing room to move around his attacks, but it's also possible that the team could have even managed to get some backup if they were playing their cards right in the first place. It's kind of like,
honestly, if they had used that quick nigga, Red Rush, to go and get some help, I mean, they would have been okay in a way.
Mark fought his dad in the reboot arc in the comics, and managed to get some help from the original Guardians before they would have been killed. Taking the fight elsewhere gives them the chance to not only expose Omni-Man, but also start requesting and getting immediate backup. Considering how things played out in the actual fight when it was just the 7 of them, I'm pretty sure even just throwing in a few extra superheroes would have meant that Omni-Man would get his ass badly stomped here. So yeah, clearly mistakes were made here. But like I said earlier, the Guardians could have easily secured a win if they started thinking...
He may be right about that, but in my opinion, if he had got those newer niggas if they had added those newer motherfuckers, those newer niggas, I think those niggas would have been done for it, though. Because they don't know what they're up against. At least, hold on.
Mistakes were made here.
If they add, I don't know, because this team not bad, though. But I think, but adding who, though? Depending on who you add might actually shift it. But if you add I don't know, if you add one or two, they're getting stomped. But if you add her because she can make clones, and then then she's look at her. And then him, I think those 3 would have shifted it, if not Mark by himself, maybe.
The man would get his ass badly stomped here. So yeah, clearly mistakes were made here. But like I said earlier, the Guardians could have easily secured a win if they started thinking about their strategy as soon as Red Rush saved Immortal. Keeping in mind that Omni-Man is one of the most powerful people on the planet, I personally would do whatever I could to keep him from attacking and force him on defense as much as possible. That's why Red Rush should have been playing defense the entire fight by moving the others out of the way whenever Omni-Man headed after him. We know based on how he saved the Immortal that he's at least as fast as Omni-Man, if not faster, and like I said earlier, this was a strategy he started using at first, and it was clearly working out well enough when he saved Immortal, War Woman, and Aquarius, so it definitely seems safe to assume that none of the others would have been touched had he been doing his job the whole time. Of course, there's only so much defense that Red Rush can do on his own, so backing him up in the defense game would have been Martian Man, who also would have kept doing what he did in the original fight by keeping Omni-Man restrained as best he can. The guy may be able to handle asteroids the size of US states, but Omni-Man apparently has a hell of a time breaking free of Martian Man's stretchy shapeshifting, to the point where he had to rip off whatever this is to finally get
That's his fucking core.
Martian before he could get back into business. Of course he'd be less likely to pull this off, literally, if we stick both Darkwing and Aquarius on the sides and have them both keep Omni-Man off balance with their ranged attacks. Both of them showed they were able to keep him on his toes and even stun him slightly from a distance, and since they're pretty squishy and were physically way weaker than him, it makes sense that they'd be off to the side and absolutely as far away from Omni-Man as possible, or being moved around by Red Rush as needed. And with Omni-Man heavily restrained, staggered, slightly off balance, and unable to touch just about anything, now we can have War Woman and Immortal beating the ever-loving fuck out of him until Omni-Man's either unconscious or dead. But comics, you might be saying. Didn't you forget somebody? What about Green Ghost?
She's out getting help. She's out getting help. She's out getting help.
Technically, we shouldn't need to use Green Ghost, since I still think everything I said earlier would have worked out fine, but she is an interesting wild card in the situation, should things still go south for the team. I mean, yeah, she kind of choked and fucked up because of it, but her phasing
She got killed off.
These actually do give her plenty of options for taking out anyone, Omni-Man included. For example, there was a moment in the comics when Green Ghost was able to disorient and distract Omni-Man by phasing through him, allowing War Woman to knock him out. Even if that's not a possibility in the show's universe though, I think she probably could have phased out something very specific so he couldn't react to anything the team was doing, like his eyes or ears maybe. Or if we assume the team's going for kill shots, I have no problem believing she could have taken his lungs, his heart, or even his brain. Either way, there's plenty of options here, but just to make sure she doesn't choke this time around, I'd leave her intangible and off to the side just in case she's needed eventually. Now, having said all that, I have seen a few theories about how Nolan was clearly holding back throughout the fight, whether to give himself a better alibi or because he doesn't want the fight to spill out in public, doesn't really matter. Either way, point is, he couldn't possibly be beaten by any of these guys, according to the theory. I mean, he did manage to super speed his way through
Facts. By himself, no less.
Destruction of the Flaxen homeworld after all, and since he's powerful enough to tank giant lasers, reanimated super corpses, and even punches from his own superpowered son, why wouldn't he be able to just super speed his way through the Guardians like he did in the comics, right? Well, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, you have to keep a couple things in mind. Like, Viltrumites are pretty tough, but they're not. Their whole strategy is infiltrating planets to weaken and prepare for an invasion. It basically spells out that they will eventually go down if they're hit hard enough by a serious threat, which the Guardians of the Globe clearly are. Omni-Man's worked with these guys for years, he'd be well aware that they're veteran heroes who can actually hurt threats stronger and tougher than they are. Regardless of whether or not you think he fought with them to take a few hits and make his story seem legit, it was confirmed later that Omni-Man showed signs of being severely injured afterwards.
Of course.
He's gonna be okay, right? We hope so.
So yeah, I highly doubt he just laid down and pretended to be asleep for the fun of it. Plus, as I mentioned earlier in this video, Red Rush was able to react to and save Immortal from a hit from Omni-Man, so clearly speed blitzing them wasn't really an option either. Point is, this team is tough, and if he wasn't fighting as hard as possible, Omni-Man would have either been captured or killed, which would have messed up his mission either way. So it doesn't really make any sense for him to hold back at any point. And if he's not holding back the entire time, and the Guardians still managed to fuck him up this badly, then it definitely starts to look more and more like they could have won that fight. Either way, I guess we might get confirmation on all of this if the writers decide to adapt that reboot story arc in a future season of the show.
Hope so.
But until then, I guess we'll just have to keep watching and see what happens. But anyways, guys, that's my take on whether or not the original Guardians of the Globe could have beaten Omni-Man in the first episode of Invincible. If you guys agreed with anything I said in this video, or if you have your own thoughts you want to throw out there, then go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you all next time.
Nah, I messed with that. That was actually mind inducing. Oh, I'm the 61,000? Yes, sir. Nah, no, honestly. True. This one's true. That's true. Red Rush was probably the biggest key to all of it, though. You know, because he can actually keep up with him. If they lose somebody that can keep up with his speed, I mean, I honestly don't think that they had a chance. Yeah, they could keep him restrained and off balance, but once he breaks those restraints, and Red Rush is gone, who's gonna keep up with his speed? I mean, that's it though for mine. Oh, that's it though. That's it though. Some good comments right there. Just not a whole lot, just a couple. Other than that, I'm not gonna. I'm done. I'm out of here. This video was amazing, very insightful. Shout out comic books versus the world. I fucks with this video. Hope you enjoyed this video because that's all I got. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Hope y'all leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if y'all interested in seeing more from this channel. Join the Empire. The button's right there. And you can turn on post notice. Hope you enjoyed this video because that's all I got for y'all today. Hopefully I turn this bitch off this time. Fuck it. Fuck.